Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the very first Patreon-sponsored episode of The Basics. By pledging to the highest reward tier, Autobot Counterpart on Patreon got to choose the subject of this episode, and they wanted to hear the basics on that teleporting Decepticon trickster, Skywarp. The original Skywarp toy started out as the F-15 Jet Robo action figure, released as part of the Japanese Diaclone toy line in 1983. The figure was imported by Hasbro in 1984 to become part of the first year of the Transformers toy line, in which it was released in 3 separate color schemes as 3 different characters: Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp. But the Diaclone toy had only come in 2 color schemes, one grey, one blue, and while those were reused by Hasbro to become Starscream and Thundercracker, Skywarp's iconic black and purple was an original invention created for the Transformers toy line. In fact, before settling on those colors, they considered making him an olive green. Marvel Comics writer Bob Budiansky characterized Skywarp as a sneak, a dimwit, and a cruel prankster who possessed the power of teleportation, one of the most famous instances of a Transformer having a superpower, which was common in 1984 but became rarer as the franchise continued. More than anything, that unique power is really what Skywarp is remembered for, because, if we're being honest, it wasn't for having a standout personality or a big role in any stories. Whether it was in the Marvel comic or in the animated series, Skywarp was just sort of there. He had his moments. The cartoon depicted him as the first Transformer revived on Earth. He was a regular battlefield presence, always eager for a fight, taking particular pleasure in taunting helpless humans, but he never had a starring role to really distinguish him. Even his teleporting power wasn't used as often as you'd expect. Would you believe he only uses it in 3 episodes out of the entire cartoon? This limited role was to be the extent of his presence in major Transformers media for 2 years, until his toy was discontinued in 1986, and he was killed off, in both the comic, in which he was blasted by Omega Supreme, and in the Transformers the movie, in which he was injured in battle, jettisoned into space by his fellow Decepticons, and had his remains recreated as a new Decepticon by the monster planet Unicron. Although fans have spent decades arguing whether he became Cyclonus, the Warrior, or his identical Armada duplicate. But you can check out The Basics on Cyclonus for more on that. Yeah, this might sound surprising to hear given the prominence he enjoys today, but during Generation 1, Skywarp just really wasn't a significant character. After his toy's discontinuation, that was it. He wasn't among the characters revived with new toys during the later years of the series or its sequel, Generation 2. And when he did eventually return, in 1997's Machine Wars toy line, it was in an unrecognizable form. Now, the following year, a Beast Wars incarnation of Skywarp was introduced, but like most Beast Warriors who reused existing names, this Skywarp was a separate character who had no connection to the original. He was a Japanese exclusive release, a slight recolor of a toy released in Hasbro markets as a different character named Silverbolt, and wasn't a villain like the original Skywarp, but a heroic Maximal Eagle. As seen in the Japanese exclusive Beast Wars 2nd anime, this Skywarp was a strict aerial combat instructor who was dispatched along with the medic Santon to warn Maximal Commander Lio Convoy about Predacon leader Galvatron's ultimate weapon, the artificial planet Nemesis. On approach to the planet Gaia, where Lio Convoy was based, Skywarp and Santon detected a flare of energy from the planet's surface that signified the birth of a powerful new life form they believed could aid in stopping Nemesis. A life form that turned out to be Lio Jr., a youthful clone of Lio Convoy. Upon arrival, Skywarp and Santon took the childish and hot-headed Lio Jr. under their wing, serving as his guardians and teachers, and combining with him to form the giant warrior, Magnaboss. The nostalgia boom of the early 2000s brought many of the classic Transformers characters back to prominence, and naturally this included longtime favourite Starscream, who got a new toy in Transformers Armada, and in emulation of the classic figure, it was soon recoloured to become new incarnations of Thundercracker and Skywarp as well, But this new Skywarp, Starscream's cousin, didn't appear in the Armada cartoon, and he only made a couple of crowd-filling cameos in the Armada comic. But his addition to the toy line marked the beginning of what's become not merely a common occurrence, but a staple of Transformers toy lines that's still ongoing today. Whether it's a mainstream toy line, a high-end collector's product, or a range of quirky side merchandise, every time there's a new Starscream or Thundercracker toy, a Skywarp recolor is likely to follow. It's a practice that's seen many new incarnations of Skywarp come into being, in the live-action movie continuity, the aligned continuity, and more, sometimes in more than one form. But the thing is, they almost never get to appear in media in any significant capacity, and they often have quite different personalities. Movie Skywarp was an experimental weapons designer with only a few comic cameos to his name, whose biggest role came in a UK-exclusive comic strip. Aligned Skywarp? A scientist/ninja who strikes from the shadows, whose claim to fame is a single level of the War for Cybertron video game. The only one to make the jump to television was the Skywarp featured in Transformers Animated, and that show decided to actually emphasize the fact he was just a recolor by depicting him, Thundercracker, and the other characters who've shared their design over the years as actual clones of Starscream. Now, each of these clones represented an aspect of Starscream's personality, and thus animated Skywarp was a snivelling coward, whose brief role in the series ended when he and Thundercracker were hurled through a space bridge portal into deep space. In allusion to the original Skywarp and his hotly debated fate though, ancillary media would imply that at some point in the future, animated Skywarp would be found by Unicron and transformed into Cyclonus. So, you see how Skywarp occupies a strange position in Transformers lore. An undeniably significant legacy character with regular presence in the brand to a greater extent than a lot of other characters can boast. Yet somehow, also kind of a perennial afterthought, who really only commands any kind of status because he originated in the first year of the brand, he's an easy recolor to make, and he's part of a classic unit of 3 that fans want to see complete each time. But there is one place where he's been able to stand out as an individual with his own unique story, and that's in IDW Publishing's comic books. IDW's Skywarp started out as the traditional, unremarkable thug of classic media, but gained a more prominent role during the Decepticon invasion of Earth, during which he single-handedly killed half the population of Beijing, and was forced to shoot Thundercracker when his conflicted loyalties led him to turn on his comrades. After the Decepticons were defeated by the Autobots, Skywarp remained on Earth in hiding, stealing and amassing weapons that he planned to gift to Megatron upon his inevitable return, only for his scheme to be foiled by Bumblebee. Later, during the Decepticons' final failed attempt to take over Cybertron, Skywarp was stabbed in mid-teleport by RC, leaving him with serious injuries that caused him to lose control of his powers, trapping him in an intangible, ghost-like state, his molecules in danger of irreparably dispersing. When Galvatron took command of the Decepticons, he promised to repair Skywarp, but all he did was strap him into a life support machine that allowed him to remotely teleport the other Decepticons around during Galvatron's subsequent campaign on Earth. Realizing that his new leader had no intention of helping him, Skywarp abandoned him and threw in with the human Earth Defense Command, agreeing to work for them if they could save his life, which they did by deactivating his teleport powers entirely. When the EDC was then shut down, Skywarp transferred to the team that replaced it, with which he's now currently serving, the highly trained Special Mission Force, G.I. Joe. Working closely and constantly trading friendly smack talk with teammate Rock'n'Roll, he helps fight the bizarre and alien threats that human Joes can't handle alone, while impatiently waiting for them to find a way to restore his powers. From Decepticon mook to franchise constant to real American hero, it's been a strange journey for Skywarp. We can be sure he's not going away anytime soon. But whether or not he'll ever warp his way onto our TV screens again remains to be seen. And those are the basics on Skywarp. Thanks once again to Autobot Counterpart for sponsoring this episode and requesting the subject, and you can do the same by heading over to patreon.com. Or just like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to tell us about your favourite Skywarp in the comments.